Hello, welcome to Authentic You. Guys, we are on to our second season. I can't believe it. We're like full-on professionals. I am SeaJay Liebscher, your host. I am the co-lead pastor of Jesus Culture Sacramento, and I have a mini farm. I say something new every time of what I have. I listed what I have last time. This is just a mini farm. It's for you to guess what I have. And I'm here with my co-host, Deborah Giles.
That's right. Hello, hello.
And what do you do, Deborah?
I am the co-director of JCSL, as well as my mom to my kids, and run a business and all sorts of things. So
what don't you do?
Exactly.
Well, we did learn she has a dog that she really loves, and we had to process through. I believe that Neosporin is the answer to every ailment on animals and humans, and so I've taught this to Deborah now.
This
so
is her.
She doesn't need to go to the vet ever again.
No, this is her Windex, like my big fat Greek wedding thing. This is her thing. I guess Neosporin is it.
It's the answer. And I'm also here with my other co-host, Erika Myburgh.
Hi, everybody. Yes, what do I do here? I am the operations pastor, which just means that I do the facility team, lead them, make sure the building doesn't burn down. I'm very successful at my job.
You are.
Because we are in the building right now. And then I also have children, 2 dogs. One I like a little bit, the other one not at all. But here we are.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good job.
Love my children. Half love the dogs.
Yeah. She
Love the
has, we
husband.
call one of her dogs a demon dog. Not all of her family agrees with this name, but I had real thoughts about this dog, that there are eagles that live in her neighborhood, and I think the eagles could take it and feed their young with this dog.
That's what I thought too, but I think he's too heavy.
He is.
Because
I researched it.
The eagles are becoming wimps as well.
they
They can't carry.
Yeah, 14 pounds is too
14
big. I literally
pound.
researched it. And then
Yeah.
she talks big, but then she's like, "Oh, that's so sad. He would be eaten." I was like, "It's
Here's
not
the
sad."
problem. I will also not have a family anymore.
Yeah.
My husband and the youngest one, if they find out that I was a part of it, then I'll have to move in with you.
But we could just pretend like you ran away. I have a plan that she won't follow through on, is all I'm saying. He's old. He has warts everywhere.
He is a wart.
Yeah.
He's a wart.
Yeah. And he's mean. He's not nice.
Well, he
anyway.
is a Chihuahua, okay? Who thinks...
Yeah, that's true.
Apparently it's in their genes.
Yes. Yeah. You're
And
right.
some of us have that gene too. It's just, it's a hard thing.
I have tried to win this dog over since they have had him. I've never had a dog not like me. So I am very how can you not like me? I would love you. I would be your best friend. I would take
Let's
care
just
of
say
your
he
warts.
is very successful in his life as well.
Yeah.
He doesn't
he
like
is.
you.
Yeah.
I
He has
know.
no need for you.
I know. Anyway,
That's funny.
we are here with Jenna Zint, who I have known you since how old were you?
I was 23.
23.
I feel like I was a baby. I know that's not, but I'm like, oh my gosh, who I was back then. I almost feel embarrassed. Like, all the immature parts of me.
Oh, I do. I'm going to expose them all. No, but I was thinking, my kids' memory of you, and this is what they all say, is her husband's the one that broke our trampoline. Yeah, that is their memory of Jenna. They're like, oh, Jenna's the one whose husband broke our trampoline. He jumped through it onto cement, though. The fact that he's okay.
Yeah.
Was one of
That
those,
is so true.
Do you remember that?
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
I also would like to say, so I was Banning's assistant.
Yes.
So I feel a little sad that they don't remember all the snacks and fun things I did.
Oh,
I'm
I
cool.
know.
I get credit for breaking the trampoline, but not any of the good stuff.
Not all the school pickups,
Yes.
not all the, I know.
The trips to ice cream. I'm
Yeah,
like, wow,
no,
okay.
the trampoline.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and Aaron ruined their life because the trampoline broke. And we were, you don't have money at that stage of life.
Oh, no.
So that trampoline we had actually taken from my sister's house. Her kids were done using it. They had jumped on it for many years. Banning and I took it apart piece by piece, spring by spring,
that's
rolled it
terrible.
up, brought it home, rebuilt it. My kids were like, "This is amazing. And then Aaron's big fat booty broke up.
Bony booty. Is that more
So
accurate?
if you knew him,
Oh my
yeah.
gosh. It's funny. I also thought you guys were like so rich because like if you didn't have money, we really didn't have money being newlyweds. And Banning would get on these kicks of cleaning out his garage, but he would tell me on his calendar, it'd be like, I'm reorganizing my life. And then I found out that for visionary speak is just cleaning out your garage. And then he would let me sell this stuff. Do you remember? So I used to Craigslist stuff that he'd be throwing away. I met sketchy people because I'd sell mattresses that they lived out of their van to them. And you'd be like, are you okay? Blink once if you didn't get abducted from that sketchy Craigslist.
He still does that, but he does that to our Sarah.
Oh,
he calls her and says, hey, I need to sell this stuff. And she does it for him and then keeps like the $4 she made, or whatever. So,
so true.
yes, Banning's is currently cleaning the garage.
He's still organizing his
Yes.
life.
When
Yes.
life gets hard,
It
we
never
clean the garage.
ends.
I have the cleanest garage. My house gets messier when he cleans the garage because there's not much is allowed in the garage.
I would say I have been to your house and your garage is stunningly clean. Like I am
Yes.
telling you, it's amazing.
We don't
It's-
have-
it's not. Like,
We don't have junk. It's not allowed.
no,
And even
junk
like
is in the house.
organized.
yeah, he will bring stuff in that I'm like, no, this doesn't go in the house. He's like, well, there's no place for it in the garage. I'm like, there is places in the garage.
It's the area he gets to control.
He does allow me, like, because I have a lot of family stuff. It matters to me to keep family heirlooms. And so he just has organized places for me to keep that stuff, which I appreciate. But there's not a lot of excess in our house. The cupboards, we actually have empty cupboards right now because he's gone through them so much in the kitchen. I'm all,
wow.
Oh, wow.
yeah, no, he's constantly
Send him to my house.
organized.
Yeah.
Yeah. So be glad you didn't move down here. So Jenna was our assistant, and then we moved, and she wouldn't move with us. So
Banning called me Jonah. Do you remember that? He was like, you're disobedient. Eventually the whale will spit you out of its mouth. And I was like, but a successful business was birthed out of it. And I was like, really? Who wasn't listening now?
that's right. You started Turban for Tots. Did you do that before we moved or
No,
after?
it was after. I always told people like at the end when I was like leaving and he'd be like, it's her last, time with us. And I'd be like, yes, he's firing a pregnant person. So after he fired the very pregnant person, then she started a business.
That was very successful.
Yeah, it was awesome. 8 years, about 20 employees at its height, and then I sold it to one of my employees. Yeah, it was so
amazing.
the Lord. It was a beautiful kind of transition from I don't know what I'm going to do next to I get to work at home while having babies and doing this. So it was cool.
And you basically sewed headbands and
Bows and hats, yeah, all around the world. Like literally, we shipped them all around.
so crazy. That was kind of right when that was happening, when all of a sudden it became cool to put all those big things on our babies' heads.
And neutral colors. I always tease because it's like everything was like sparkly and pink before. And the reason I started making it, I was like, where's like the tan bow? Or where's the linen something? And now stores have caught on. So Target doesn't just sell hot pink stuff,
Oh, you should go after them.
I know, be like,
Did you
"Come on."
trademark your bows and now go back to Target and say those are mine?
No, but my oldest, so she was my model, was all over Amazon and China, AliExpress, because they would just steal our photos. So she was like all over the web. I was like, you're famous. But we're not profiting a dime from that fame.
Oh my gosh. You're one of my favorites to watch because you're such a go-getter. Like it's I think I would wish I was a go-getter, and I am in some areas, but not in the areas that you are, because you're not afraid to do things in front of people, I guess. Like you're not afraid of that failure or something, even though I don't know if I've seen you fail, but like doing a podcast or something feels very like, ooh, people will know if this fails. Or starting a business, where like, hey, I can start a garden. Nobody's going to know if I failed, if everything dies. But or if I kill all my chickens. It's a safe place to be risky. But tell us what you're doing now.
Yeah, so after I had finished my kids, I realized I didn't want to keep being in the baby world. So then one of my employees who had been with me for a while, I sold the business to her. And I felt like I'm really good at dreaming. And in that season, I felt like the Lord was like, end well, and then let me show you what's next. Can you actually focus on growing in this area? So in doing that, ended, and then it's just beautiful timing of the Lord. I had some areas that were really successful, but then I have other areas of my life that was just, I was a hot mess, like truly a hot mess. Like my house, I could not keep my house clean for the life of me, or just some basic kind of maybe things that I call like adulting principles. Like like I maybe was successful over here in business and my marriage was good and I was good at having fun, but like paying the bills on time or returning library books or anything that I was like more monotonous, I just couldn't master. So in this process of like selling the business, and it was during COVID, so it was also painful because it was like sales decreased a lot. I just felt like the Lord was like, there is something next for you. But if you don't actually look at your lids, like the things that are your weakness and holding you back, you'll just bring them and replicate them in the next thing you do. So do you actually want to go after working on some of your weaknesses, or do you just want to keep leaning on your strengths? And I was like, okay. So I went on this season of just going after the areas I was not good at versus just paying people. I think I just paid people to be like, go do my laundry, go clean my house. And I was like, oh, actually, like I want to be able like to rebuild trust with myself in these areas. So then I discovered, I started with Atomic Habits. I read that book and I was like, okay, maybe there's hope for me on some of the monotonous things that I thought were beyond my personality or skill set. And then I just went on this 2-year deep dive of getting really into like behavior science with the Lord, like a combo of Holy Spirit, Jesus, behavior science of like, oh, actually, like, I don't think we're supposed to do these overnight overhauls. I actually think how we change is like, my little phrase is little bits of better with the Lord. Like when I go for really dramatic change, it's usually out of self-sufficiency or shame motivating for how much of a mess this is. But what does it look like to kind of partner and stay in step with the Lord as he like shifts parts of my character versus, just dramatic action that wasn't sustainable. So anyways, I became I really became obsessed with habits. Like my kids will ask them all, even my 5-year-old will tell you like all of his habits because that's what we talk about all the time at home. And as I was changing my own life, I started bringing friends along with it. I started like a book club and then I was like, maybe I'll do some coaching. And now I'm a couple years into I have a business called Habit Lab. I have a podcast and I do like a course to help people. Actually, Deborah's sister Havel and I work together with it. We co-launch some of my courses with me. But the main thing that I feel like I feel really passionate about is like going after the areas, because everyone's stuck in a different way. It's maybe mine's the house cleaning, but maybe someone's dialed in house cleaning in their marriage. They feel stuck in their marriage. But instead of actually using shame to motivate that change, like what does it look like partnering with the Lord and actually intentionally stewarding and investing what you do have? So I always think of it like the widow with the 2 coins. Like actually, sometimes we think we need to do these huge, like, $10,000 investments of change into our marriage. But what if you just actually started by showing up every day by giving the 2 coins that you do have? Because we just get kind of like all or nothing. Like we're either going to be totally new people or we're going to avoid it until we feel like change is possible. So I'd say that's what I do. I help people get unstuck, partner with the Holy Spirit, and what does it look like to actually like implement those things in your heart with where you're currently at, rather than waiting for like the perfect season for things, everything to fall in alignment. And that's when I get to be that missionary in Africa, So that's what I do.
This is just me being nosy, and it's my podcast, so we can talk about this, right? What are areas that you have seen people be stuck in?
I think there's actually, when I work with people, there's a good chunk of people who feel like me, where they feel stuck in the literal basics of life. But why that doesn't feel major is because it's like, oh, it's your laundry. That's not thwarting who you are as a child of God. But if you're always drowning in this area, you never get to like forward motion. Like I felt I never had margin to invest in my purpose because all these areas were on fire in my life. So I see people who are like me with that. Like they just can't get ahead some of the basic things. Then other folks who honestly have like identity pieces in relationship that feel really stuck. So they have callings, but they don't believe they're worth it or haven't dealt with some of those like beliefs that keep them stuck. Yeah. So kind of just actually sitting long enough and be like, what's the next step that I could take? Rather than like I know I want to go over there and like, that's awesome. What's your next step then? Be like, no, 10 miles down the road. Like, totally. But what could you do if you didn't have, like, if you were brave enough to risk it and you didn't believe that it wasn't possible? Like, what was actually feasible in this season that you could do?
Going down the same path here, I wanted to ask you about personality type. Because SeaJay and I, this is exactly this. I'm a complete... I'm a total moderate person, and I love small steps, and I know it's wise to take smaller steps so that take the kind of step where I can feel successful in, and that motivates me for the next thing. But I'm naturally built like that.
Yeah.
And then we have SeaJay, and I've watched it over the years with my friends. Typically, they try to work on their house, but the way they do it is not maintaining every day. Friday or Saturday, we are going to spring clean. And I'm like, okay, I don't spring clean because that is pretty much overwhelming for anybody on this planet, because it takes you 8 hours.
Yeah.
And you get lost in that, and it's just too much, and you fail. So I'm naturally set up to do things in a way that I feel successful in. But so then CJ is just a completely different personality. So I lean into that, and CJ does not, because God put it together that way. So how do we do this with different personalities?
I think
because I think you're probably way more like her.
Totally.
Yes,
I think that's the beautiful thing is like that's the aspect I feel like that behavior science or Atomic Habits doesn't have is like the Holy Spirit, your relationship with the Lord, like who you're wired. So instead of hating how I'm wired, I'm like, how can I work with how He made me? If He didn't make a mistake in making me,
correct,
to actually lean into my natural tendencies.
Yeah.
And then sometimes, like I always think of it like a kind of a spectrum of I love spontaneity. So I avoided a lot of structure because I thought I'd have to give up the parts of me that made me who I was. So I was like, oh, like this isn't who I was made to be. But then when I actually plainly looked at it, I was like, oh, the chaos that I live in by like idealizing spontaneity is actually hindering connection with my kids, with the Lord. Like if I'm flying by the seat of my pants every morning, then my quiet time will get the short, like whatever's on fire is what I'm usually giving my energy to or spontaneous. So actually realizing like the right amount of structure can actually support whatever my core value or vision for my life is. So kind of that's what I think I love seeing people be like, hey, you're not actually meant to look like me. You know, the words on my life aren't what the words on your life, but what's the right amount of structure that supports how you're wired and who you're meant to be.
Yeah.
And then specifically in this season, because like for me in the summer, I shift a lot of like, I actually, every season, I just have some time with the Lord. And I'm like, what is my word for this season? And then I purposely reorder my life to actually match the marching orders that I feel like for the season. So this summer, my word was connection and recalibrate. And so I purposely took off from, I don't build my business in the summer. I took off from social media. I teach a lot. My husband and I teach at our church. We don't do that for the summer so that we can recalibrate as a family and reestablish our culture in a way that I know will benefit the rest of the year. But I think actually getting in touch with like, what's your personality and what's on your life for this season, and then purposely reordering your habits and what your priorities are to match what you know the Lord's calling you. Because sometimes we just copy and paste other people's lives and you're like, that's not their season or your personality.
Yeah.
So just taking a little, it's crazy, just like 15, I have like 4 or 5 questions I ask myself every season. And then like my husband and I chat, and then we talk to the kids, and then we recalibrate and reorder so that we're on what we feel like as a family we're headed towards. Because I think we could talk about like what we feel inspired to do, but actually implementing it is where a lot of us like have the disconnect. So I'm like, oh, like that's what habits are for me. Like the inspiration of what I feel like the Lord's calling us to or what we value as a family. And it's actually living out of those core values versus just saying they're our core values. So yes, they're keeping our house cleaner, but they're also like teaching our children how to contribute when it's not just benefiting them, like in the house, like as a family, and teaching them. We actually have some serving. We have a couple habits around like getting outside of our family for service. Like if I say this is a core value to raise generous children and have a generous family, where are the actions or ways that I'm investing into building this?
I love that. I had the privilege of going through your habit lab last year, which was really incredible. And I think what Erika is touching on is really true in the sense that we think, well, if it comes to you naturally, I would say habits have been very trendy. It was kind of this trendy thing for a couple of years. It was Atomic Habits. It was all these habits. And a lot of them, I would say I've read a lot of books on habits, are mostly written by men. I hate to say it that way, but it's a very easy to disconnect life when you're a man going into a workplace and you're creating organization and how you want and habits how you want. But as a busy mom with kids and littles and life, it's just a little bit more complicated than that. And so what I love to see within what you did with the course, and I do believe in what you bring, is that you're coming from a place where it was a weakness that you've learned to create strength in. And I think sometimes we go with what we're good at, and then, it's like, well, that's just not who I am. But what I love is that you're really telling people this may not be who you are, but it's actually holding you back from what God's called you to do. And so if you don't learn to grow, you're not going to get that way. And so if someone, I'm kind of an all or nothing. I was a house cleaner for years, so we'd go in and clean a house once a week, and you get it nice and sparkling, and then you don't touch the house for the rest of the week. And then I don't know if you're like that, or once every 6 months, my dad is very similar to Banning. We gut the garage and then just let it live and gather. And so I didn't really live in a day in, day out habit. I'd say we were more routine than habit. I'll be honest. So we lived in a routine, but we didn't live in a habit. What would you say for somebody who is more of an all or nothing person, who is like, I've read the book and I want to deep clean my house and spin, gut every closet and do all that. And then they get uninspired within a couple of days. And then it's like, that's not me. How do people start? Like you said, there's questions you ask yourself. How do people start to unlock some of that and start these daily habits to get them to where they need to go?
Yeah. I just looked back at how many times it didn't serve me. Like, how many times did I start something drastic action, and did it actually change who I was, or did I experience short-term success? So then I would just plainly ask, like, what are you more interested in? Are you interested in getting your house clean for a week, or do you want to learn how to keep your house cleaner? And then you're like, if you want to keep your house cleaner, then learning how to do a little bit every day is going to be where you become that kind of person, not you do it once a week on your to-do list. So I think a lot of times we just get so overwhelmed with not liking where it is. So like, my house is trash, I need to do something drastic. Like, yes, totally. Clean your house, not a problem. But if you want to keep it at a spot where there's a level of peace, I kind of, with my house, I always, my goal is 70% because perfectionism can start to creep in too. So I'm like, 70% allows my kids to be kids and people to come over and feel safe and comfortable, because I actually want connection over a perfect house, Yes. So then realizing, like, what do I do to get there? And working my way backwards of like, how do I maintain that? Because I'm the kind of person, like, I usually have statements behind why I do my habits. And for my environment habits, like, that's what I call it, clean my house, I'm the kind of person that can keep and maintain peaceful environments that facilitate connection and thriving relationships. So when I remember that, I'm like, oh yeah, that's why it's actually helpful to go back and clean my counter right now versus waiting till it's overflowing, because I want my kids to be able to sit up here and like talk to me while I'm cooking dinner. And if it's sticky and there's no room for them, like, that doesn't actually happen. So it's not because I'm trying to impress Sally if she walks into my house. It's because I know the peace facilitates what I'm looking for as the culture of my house.
So what would be habits that you work on if you're somebody who has, order in their life, doesn't have, because I think the habits we can all naturally think of are like cleaning your house, doing your laundry, taking the trash out. Like, that all makes sense for people. But so if you have that all in line and you're good at it, and you are, like you say, maybe you have to work on the relational. I have no idea what a habit would be to work on relational, because that part's pretty easy for me. So I'm like, what does that look like? How do you have a habit about relationships?
That one, we actually do a whole 2 weeks on that, because it's why some people come in, but they're like, how do you actually, it feels almost like too inorganic for something that's so organic.
Yes.
But this idea of like, if it matters to you, what you like actually value, you need to invest in. So learning to invest. So some of my like basic ones are, a lot of times it's people who have pain. Like, how do I start to bridge the gap with my mom or my aunt or a friend that I lost contact? So we talk through, like, what would it look like? A lot of people, if it's like a lot of pain, maybe it's just starting with praying for them to actually change your heart before you're actually ready to reach out. Some people, part of my relational habits is I have a ton of stationery. Whenever I think of someone or someone's going through a hard time, I probably send like 3 or 4 cards a week, because I'm like, oh, that's what I have to give. Or voice memos. Like, if I know someone's going through a hard part, I don't actually have the time, because I'm pretty busy, to maybe like schedule a phone call or talk in real time, but I could say a prayer. So that's one of my relational habits, is when I know friends are going through hard times, I'll actually voice memo prayers to them. Or some of the relationships that are more strained, like, okay, I'm going to connect. A lot of this area feels like we're not ready to like move into, but I'm going to share a memory. Like, once a week, I'm going to send, oh my gosh, I love that vacation, or something. So just making directions, like, you're not there yet, but pointing yourself towards what you want to be. Or some people, like with play dates, like actually purposely inviting a new person to a park for 45 minutes, like lower stakes. Like, a lot of times people think a 4-person dinner to my house every week. You're like, whoa, that's like way too high stakes. Like,
it's
hey, I'm
all
going to
part
the
of the drastic.
Yes.
Like, we need to move away from the drastic
I'm going to start a
measures.
small group. You're like, why don't you go to the park for 30 minutes and say who wants to come?
Intentional steps where you can experience success.
Yep.
And because that also motivates us when you actually feel successful. But a lot of us don't feel successful because that first step is so big,
Yes.
so drastic that nobody can really make it, or you make it for one day. It's like it's too much.
Yeah, like
Can't
you
do
said,
it. Yeah.
offensively small. And I remember when
Yeah.
we were in this, it would be like, okay, my first habit is to go to the gym. Like I'd be like, you know what I mean? Like I got to work out. So
Yeah.
my first habit is go to the gym. And I remember you going, okay, that's like 8 steps in.
Yeah.
That's 8 habits into you going to the gym. And just that breaking it down into really small things to feel successful. I think for me, I stop habits because I feel unsuccessful. It's like I can handle it for a week or two, but then you're telling me to do it for a month or 2 months, I'm out. Like I'm done. Like it's almost like fasting. I can fast for a week or two, but then I'm out. Like I'm not going to eat healthy forever. Like, but in that way. And so it's like breaking it down so small. And so if someone were to, so the relational side, obviously working on that, practically, if someone's like, I feel like I'm in chaos, like kind of like you felt you were, I'm in chaos. Like, where do I go? Like, how do I start this without feeling like it's all so overwhelming? And like, where do I start?
Well, I think that's like the beautiful part, what we have like relationship with the Holy Spirit. I usually ask, like when I feel like there's 10 areas I could dive into, I'm like, Lord, where's the grace for the first? Like, where is my open door in the win? I had some strain and pain with one member of my family, and me just praying for them every day. Like that was my offensively small towards like for blessing and changing my heart towards them. And I was like, how is this ever going to be 10 steps down the road? But I'm like, actually, I'm putting myself and I'm aligning with what you're doing. And I think sometimes I get into self-sufficiency when I want to do dramatic action where I'm like, if I hustle enough, I can unlock it or make it happen. But actually, like I always tease that small habits are the pace of grace, where it's like I'm partnering with what you're doing and I'm not sidelining myself to be like, hey, go do it for me, God. Like I'll have a lemonade over here, but I'm also not going to make it happen. Like I will keep in sync knowing that you actually are going to do the heart change for me and them. I'm not my own savior, nor can I like do reformation, but I will, like I actually care about co-laboring in real time with what you're doing. Cause so often I would look back at seasons, be like, oh, the Lord was doing that and I didn't know it. I'm like, what if I actually just partnered in real time with what he was doing? How much less confusion or how much more effective could I have been? Like, I'm not going to save myself or open that door, but like an example would be my husband and I, like we love teaching about marriage. We actually speak about marriage a lot. We have a podcast and I like feel like there's this word that eventually we will travel and speak about it. But I was like, well, we have small kids. That's not for this season. So my instinct was to like put it on the shelf until our season shifts because I'm super aware of that's not now. But the Lord was just like, but what could you do to steward that word? And I'm like, well, I could tell people we're speaking and maybe get invites. And then I was like, wait, no, what's actually offensively small? That's actually why we started our podcast. I was like, what can we do in our house that is stewarding what we feel like we're meant to have? And then the next step, like 2 years later, was we teach a relational class at our church. We're like, okay, that's like, so it's like within our wheelhouse of like, this is what the Lord has on our life. Like, how do I like engage with the process, but not be the one saving myself? Like he's actually so much more interested in whom I'm becoming, and me showing up, be like, I know this is who we're becoming. So like, just mold us. It's not going to be an overnight overhaul. You're actually shaping me for the rest of my life, but I want to make sure I'm in sync and in season with what you're doing.
Love that.
I think it's interesting what you say, because habits can feel so practical, but which they have practical pieces attached, but it's really about a heart and mind shift change, like even, like with relationships or allowing people in, it's not a physical, like, oh, I'm going to put my shoes away every day. It's a heart change of like, oh, I need this and I have to make a shift towards it. I had the realization, I don't know, 10 years ago, like recognizing I'm the all or nothing, because one of the big things was I started working out with Erika, and I fought it for so long because I had always played sports. And so everything you did was so intense. And it was like every time I would jump back into working out up until then, it was just, I would do it so intensely that like, I remember I almost threw up outside of one of the gyms because I God forbid you just do something slow and only do it part way. I'm like, I will be the greatest, so strong. I haven't worked out. I've like had children, and I'm like now vomiting outside a gym at 6:30 in the morning, which also going at 5:30 in the morning is not something I'm going to sustain.
Yeah.
I am not a 5:30 in the morning person, but I'm now pretending I am that because I am now the workout queen.
And you've idealized this is what it looks like to be good at working out.
Yes.
You go
And
early in the
then, so
morning.
I finally started with Erika, and because she's Miss Moderation, she's like, hey, your goal is just to push yourself. It doesn't matter what everybody else does. And I'm all, this is a real hard shift for my head, a real hard shift for my head to just, but then the freedom that came of like, oh, I'm just proud I showed up.
Yeah.
I was proud I showed up. I can't show up anymore because my neck broke, but well, no, it didn't really break. It didn't really break, but it's not functioning correctly. So
Jenna, what I love, and it's what you're saying, is that it's more of an intentional partnership with the Holy Spirit than it is just buying a new app or a calendar,
Right.
Yes.
or all these articles. Not that those things are wrong, but it's right if that's where the Holy Spirit takes you. But I love that.
yeah.
Actually, even for me, who is super moderate and all the things, I'm like, oh, that is so. Oh, it's dynamic, it's organic, it's with the Holy Spirit who knows us best.
Yeah.
And because we also, what we do as humans, we judge ourselves and when we do and compare with other people. And I always tell my kids, when we live in that comparison thing, we never are successful, hardly ever. We usually fail in our own eyes.
Yeah.
And when when you sit and think about it, that is not how God sees us or his feelings and thoughts about us or his purpose for us. So everything about this, just literally creating habits in our lives, is so uniquely crafted, and because we are unique and he created us. And like you said, he didn't make a mistake.
Yeah.
He didn't make you a mistake being like
Yeah.
SeaJay, like all or nothing.
Yeah.
And me, like I would be one of the ones who would, a clean house is not more important than connection. And I absolutely love your 70%. I may sound like I'm a perfectionist, but I'm not. I'm one of those who I can maintain, but I'm fully aware of all the dust and that I don't move chairs or wash my floors. I can vacuum it, but if my mom comes to visit, I'm going to move the chair. So then it's like 90%. But so I'm like better at maintaining, but that is because that's grace also, walking in grace, the 70%. The one thing that kills us is perfection.
Yeah.
It is.
Is that thinking that growth is perfection. It couldn't be more different. No,
And
but
even
anyway, I love
success
that.
is because I think consistency, I watch people a lot of times when they're going on a journey, they think consistency and perfectionism are the same. Like you maybe wouldn't say it, but you're like, oh, so what is success? So sometimes I just really clearly define success is showing up at the gym.
Yes.
Success isn't 40 minutes or whatever. I'm like, oh, success. And then so that I can be like, good job, Jenna. I'm proud of you. Like I see you invested. Like that was good. Like, yep, maybe you'll do a little different tomorrow or in 2 months, but like for now, you're just showing up.
Or
and I'm proud of
success
you.
is like, oh, I did it 3 times in 1 week.
Yes.
Right. Because it's also like it's an attainable goal that you set with the Lord. Like don't start with 5:30, 7 days a week.
Yes.
It's like if you maybe twice a week, and that is great success and well done. Love that. I really, really love that.
There's just going back to the idea of like, because sometimes we can shame when we start small, shame because like, what will that ever do? Or that's so small compared to what you want to do. And one of the things that we've just been working on as a family for a year is I want to have kids that are aware of how blessed we are and are in touch with like that we live in a first world nation. So 2 years ago, I led a missions trip. Like I gathered a bunch of my friends and we did a mom and me missions trip to build a house in Mexico. And it was awesome. And it was really wonderful, but we weren't able to do that last year. So I had this mentality of like, oh, like what can I do? Like that was my habit to like invest in this, like which is our core value. And I just like sat with the Lord and he was like, what if you actually just share cause like in our fridge, I meal prep, like I'm pretty regular about that. And we don't always eat all of it. So I have extra a lot. And he's like, what if you actually shared some of your extra meals, like one of your lunches once a week with one of the homeless people, because we live near a bunch of walking trails. So like that for the last year, we've got to be like, okay, I can't do that missions trip. And I could have actually just sat in shame and be like, it's out of my reach. I can't do it anymore. I failed. Like, But instead I'm like, what can I do? Like instead of being limited by like what's on my plate, like the Lord wants me to have a peaceful home and be present with my kids. I know that's what it is. So we just walk down. We have like probably a couple times a week to a couple homeless men that we've made friends with, and we share our food, like literally meals with them. It's not glamorous. Sometimes it's our breakfast sandwich. Sometimes it's pancakes. Be warned, I think there's cocoa mix in there. Wesley made. I don't know what's in there. But this idea of like, oh, if I'd let shame tell me that it wasn't enough or I wasn't, because like sometimes I feel embarrassed. I'm like, I'm solving nothing. This is not a beautiful act. This is not huge. But what it is my kids like, oh, I feel like kind of teary. My kids now like notice all the homeless people and empathy. And I don't feel annoyed like I used to, because what I thought we were sharing our food, like watching our perspective as a family change and not being too busy. Like I have this core value of like, I don't want to be the Pharisee that's too busy to stop when the person's hurting. And I'm like, and so what does that look like practically? So just sharing. So like, don't let shame talk you out of what you do have because you're aware of like what you wish it looked like or what you've given in the past. Like a lot of times people live in the past of like what was success, and I can't do that. So I'm not going to do anything. I'm like, oh, actually I care more that like, this is who you called us to be. So like, this is what I have. Is this enough? I'm like, he's so proud of me that that's all I have. Like, okay, I'm going to show up in this capacity.
So good.
That's so good.
I love that you have been at a place that you've been allowed to pivot in your life. And I think sometimes we get stuck in a role and we think like that's it and that's the role. And I've just watched you over time. I don't know you that long, maybe a couple of years, probably through COVID.
Yeah.
Just watched you even living out loud online. But there's this sense of that you were one way, or maybe you were the world defined you in one way, but you've come back and said, you know what, God defines me in another way, and I'm going to work towards that. And I've seen like this creativity with you starting a business, and then that's done. Now you're doing this other business / ministry, and just all these things that you're creating. And a lot of times you see people who are very successful or have a lot going on. There's a lot of chaos behind the scenes. Like, let's be honest. So they can show up well. A lot of the social media people, let's be honest, influencers, there's chaos behind all the doors and everything that you don't see. You just see beauty. You don't understand the sacrifice it takes. But what I love is that you're concentrating on the experience of your family in the middle of taking on marriage ministry stuff and habit stuff and business stuff and all these things. You are concentrating on how is this going to affect my environment and what that looks like. And I just think that's amazing. Very, very cool.
I actually felt the Lord give me a specific direction. Like with my first business, I did tunnel vision, and I like would stay up till 2 a.m. doing work, and then I'd wake up at 6. And when you're sleep deprived, I was not my best version of myself. And with this, the Lord, like I could feel almost the urgency, because it is interesting being in such a prophetic culture where we're in touch with like these, we know what some of the plans are for our lives. There's this urgency to get there faster. But the Lord, for this, like whatever this ends up being, I feel like the Lord's just like, you do not have permission to go into tunnel vision to build. Like you actually, like your mandate is to make sure when you get, wherever you get, that all areas of your life are thriving. So I've had to do governor, like, hey, actually, like I want to build that resource. I think we're going to record that, but not to the detriment of like, this area is a little bit like, so I'm going to pull back. So I just feel this like urgency, because it's so interesting with social media and all the, you can always be building. It's forever like almost input overwhelm with the next thing you want to tackle.
Yes.
So I've stopped. I actually don't listen to a ton of podcasts. I limit myself to like 2 podcasts. I don't read a ton of books. I actually reread books that really marked me from years past, because I'm like, I want to be changed by this, not just inspired. Like I actually want to have some takeaway of how I'm applying that really good book. So I think even just managing our intake of like, okay, like actually let's become, not just, we can consume so much. Like we're such a consumption society, but I'm like, I actually want to become. I don't want to just keep consuming.
I love that.
So you're just reading Rooted over and over again? Is that what you're saying? I knew it.
100%.
I knew it. You're just reading any book by Banning Liebscher.
Banning Liebscher. Oh my gosh.
God.
I used to yell. So when I was his assistant, he would like never want to talk about his books because he didn't want to be, what's the word, like put himself out there.
Yes, he's
like,
so annoying.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, but then I'd get all these emails. I remember one time coming in with like a 3-page email from a prison inmate whose book has changed his life. And I was like, this is why you have to talk about your book when you go places, because you're robbing people of testimonies like this. This is not self-promotion. And he was like,
He's still the same way.
He's still the same.
He's still the same way.
His books are so good.
I don't even think our kids know how many books he's written. Like he wouldn't talk about it. I think our kids make fun of him most of the time because they have no idea who he is.
They have to go find his
like
stuff.
He's just their dad who's a little dorky the older he's getting. Like that is literally how our children know him. I'm like,
that's the best. That's so real.
Oh, Jenna, this is so good. I'm challenged. I love this because I knew you when you were not this.
That was a hot mess, Jenna.
Oh my gosh. I don't know if this is okay to even talk about. So if it's not, we can cut it out. But it makes me laugh to imagine you and Aaron this put together, because I remember you talking about when you first were dating him and when you got married, how you went to change his sheets to move him out.
He didn't know the frequency that you were supposed to change your sheets. Let's say
just say that. And it was very dirty.
It was so we got married. We were a perfectly hot mess.
And I was just like, okay, I'm a mess. And that's another
next level.
Because I'm a lot like you and Aaron. Like when me and Banning got married, I didn't know how to use vacuum attachments. So like he came home one day and I'm like, I can't get this area clean. Like the vacuum won't go there. And he's all,
let me show you.
Do you not know about vacuum attachments? I was like, no, not at all.
I'm so impressed that a college boy did though.
Yeah, so I'm not like at all in judgment of you and Aaron at all, because I'm like, yes, I understand. This is how we live. We had way more fun than we had clean.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but yes, that was one of my favorites. So I'm just sitting here going, this is so impressive.
You know what's crazy about that? Like, because it's easy to be like, house cleaning habits are so like not related to Jesus or my calling.
Oh.
But the crazy part, like one of the things that we would say, like even when we were dating, is that we're called to like facilitate community. And what I didn't realize is having my house such a mess now, being on this side of it, we probably entertained 4 or 5 times a week because that barrier to entry. And I was like, what's the difference? Like we weren't before. And I was like, oh my gosh, me not having my habits in order was actually hindering the calling on my life, because this tool of like facilitating like community happening, I was so embarrassed and didn't have it together. I couldn't. So it's not actually secular versus like divine or purpose. I'm like, we're such interconnection to everything that it's been beautiful being like, oh, I feel more in line with like having this in order because I'm being able to use this tool like I was meant to be. It's crazy.
It's making me think of things that I think the Holy Spirit probably led me through. Like one of the things that was important to me was that my home was a place that all my kids' friends came and that there was snacks that they would eat. And like that was just something that was just always like a main thing. But then it was so hard to keep up with it. And so then I just created Sundays are when I do the shopping and prepare for the week, because if I had to do it midweek, it was a hot mess. It didn't work out. I didn't have time for it. And it just became this thing. And sure enough, my house is the pantry that every teenager wants to be at. and I just look back and I'm like, oh, but that was because I created Sundays. As the day to do, so like, because at first I'm all, wow, you did all your decisions with such intention, and I'm sitting there thinking like, oh, have I ever made a decision out of intention? I'm like, oh, I did. Right. I did. I got one, guys. I got one habit.
That's the interesting part, though, when you peel back some of the things that are so innate, you're like, oh, I have a bunch of habits that I didn't know were there.
Yes.
Like your strengths probably has like 10 habits that you would not say offhand. And the thing that you're known for probably has all these things that you're like, oh, because I want to foster this.
Yeah.
And we're like, how do we foster this? I always think of the analogy of like your habits are like the trellis that you're supposed to see the plant and you're supposed to see the fruit. Like a tomato plant can't hold without something holding it up. So it's like the habits are supposed to be in the background and you're supposed to encounter the life and the fruit of it. So that's what you're encountering. You're encountering the fruit of all those subtle habits.
Yes. It's just interesting to think of. And I love the relational small habits around people that are hard. I was like, oh, that's good. I hadn't thought how to break that down.
So Jenna, as we wrapping up, like, how can anybody access are you doing a course, podcast? Are you writing a book? What's happening?
Yes.
How can we get hold of this?
Oh my gosh. Okay, let me give you my phone number. I have, so I teach, if you go to thehabitlab.org, I teach a class. It's a 10-week habit course, and it covers everything because there are so many different people. So it's like relational habits, it's like financial habits, it's environment habits, it's food, it's nutrition, it's fitness, it's Jesus habits, because let's be honest, we don't have those all dialed in. So that happens 3 times a year, and that's where you can find that information. I also do one-on-one coaching. So jennazint@gmail.com is the easiest way, or Jenna Zint on Instagram is the easy way. I always talk about habits.
Thank you.
My kids call it the H word. I'm like, I hope you don't say that at school, because there are actual H words.
That is so funny. Oh my gosh. Well, Jenna, this has been such a gift. Thank you for coming.
Oh, thank you for having me.
It's been great.
We love this. This is so good. All right. Well, we hope you enjoyed this. ladies and our 2 men. And we think there are 2 men. Oh. There are 2 men that listen to our podcast. And they're faithful. Faithful. I don't know their names, but I believe in them.
Right? Our husbands all listen.
Yeah. My husband
I know.
listen.
That's why there's 2, not 3 men.
Well, we love to hear from you guys. If you've got anything you want to tell us, anything that you want us to talk about, let us know. Thanks for listening.